Some lessons are only earned. I'm Walter Finch, 78 years old. I was Chief Financial Officer for 38 years. My worth wasn't in the numbers I crunched. It was in the deals we never wrote down. When they forgot that, they cost the company everything. It started long before the board hired Liam Vance. It started with a man named Frank Miller in a warehouse that smelled of sawdust and machine oil. I was 40 years old. He was 43. We were trying to save both our companies, and the deal we made wasn't on any spreadsheet. You see, real business isn't done in the boardroom. It's done in the spaces between the lines. A handshake after helping someone move a sick child to the hospital. A favor returned a decade later. No invoice needed. That's what held the supply chain together for 33 years. Frank's company, Miller Precision Parts, was our bedrock. Every single model we made for nearly 4 decades had his components at its heart. Our contract was a simple 3-page document. The real agreement was a conversation we had every Monday for 30 years. I knew his foreman's name. He knew my daughter's birthday. If we had a temporary cash flow hiccup, he'd float us. If he had a rush order, we'd adjust our schedule. The spreadsheet said it was a vendor relationship. The truth was, it was a partnership built on 40 years of trust. My wife, Rose, she understood this long before I did. She was a gardener. She'd say, "Walter, you can measure the height of a tomato plant, but you can't measure the health of the soil. Value what they can't measure." That was her advice the year before she passed. I thought I understood it. I didn't. Not really. Not until they tried to measure me. The day I met Liam Vance was the day I felt the weather change. He was 42. Brilliant, they said. A data disruptor. He toured the office like he was inspecting an archaeological dig. My corner office, with its worn leather chair and the framed photo of the original plant groundbreaking. To him, it was wasted square footage. He talked about latency, algorithms, lean operational matrices. He never asked about Frank Miller. The meeting where he let me go was on a Tuesday. It was so sterile. The coffee was getting cold in a porcelain cup. The hum of the fluorescent lights was the loudest sound. He didn't say I was fired. He said the organization was pivoting to a digital-first competency model, and my skill set, while historically valuable, was not aligned with the future velocity. He said the word legacy like it was a disease. 38 years. My counteroffer was a handshake deal with a man who kept the lights on. He didn't want to hear it. The severance package was generous. I think that made it worse. It was a payment to forget my own history. He hired a whiz-kid consultant to renegotiate all the vendor contracts. They got Miller Precision Parts to sign a new 60-page master service agreement. It optimized payment terms, added stringent delivery penalties, and eliminated all informal accommodations. And here's the part that haunts me, even though it's not my fault. Buried on page 47, clause 17.b, a mutual 30-day termination for convenience, with no cause required. I was pruning Rose's old rose bushes when my phone rang. It was Frank. His voice, usually so warm, was flat, distant. "Walter," he said, "I just got off the phone with your new fellow, Vance. He's demanding a 12% price reduction, retroactive for the last quarter, citing new benchmarking data. He threatened to invoke the termination clause if we didn't comply.
Frank went silent for a long moment. "You and I had a deal, Walter. A man's word. He's not you. I'm invoking the clause. I'm sorry. My grandson can run the numbers, but he can't tell me why I should do business with a man who doesn't understand respect." The call lasted 90 seconds. It ended a 40-year partnership. And just like that, the soil beneath the company was gone.
What Liam's spreadsheets couldn't model was the specificity of Miller's parts. They weren't commodities. They were custom manufactured to a tolerance no other supplier in North America could meet at our volume. Finding a new supplier? Maybe 18 months. Qualifying their parts for our safety certifications? Another year. The clock started the day Frank hung up. Liam had 30 days of inventory in the warehouse. After that, the assembly lines would stop. Not slow down, stop. I watched it happen from my living room. The trade journals first, then the worried calls from old colleagues, their voices tight with panic. Then the financial news snippets. Supply chain discontinuity, production halt looming, share price erosion. They had 87 days of customer orders in the pipeline they could not fulfill. The penalties would bankrupt them. You see, they traded a living network of trust for a dead document full of loopholes. And the loophole they thought was their weapon became their coffin. Rose would have told me to be still, to let the garden find its own balance. And I was, for 78 days. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. There he was, Liam Vance. No sleek car in the driveway, just a rideshare pulling away. He was drenched. His designer jacket was soaked through. The confidence was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out look I'd seen before, in men facing total loss. He didn't even say hello. He just said, "We need to talk. Please." I let him in. He stood on my rug, water pooling at his feet, looking at the books, the photos, the lived-in comfort of a life he'd dismissed as obsolete. The CEO was gone. In his place was just a man who'd broken something he didn't understand. He talked in a frantic rush. The inventory numbers, the penalty clauses with their clients, the failed talks with 4 other suppliers, the board's ultimatum. His words were just noise. When he finally ran out of air, he looked at me, and his voice cracked. "What did I miss? Just tell me what to do." I offered him tea. He stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. While the kettle boiled, I asked him one question. "Did you ever call Frank Miller about his grandson's graduation?" He just blinked. I said, "Frank's boy, Jason, first in the family to get an engineering degree. Frank talked about it for a year. He sent me an invitation. I sent a card." Liam's face went pale. He'd never spoken to Frank about anything but deliverables and cost per unit. And there it was, the billion-dollar mistake. Not in a financial model, in the human one. I explained it to him, slowly. The deal that wasn't on the books. It was a simple promise. As long as I was at that company, Frank's business was secure. And in return, his loyalty was our insurance policy. You didn't buy parts from Frank Miller. You invested in a shared future. You terminated my presence, and in doing so, you voided the only warranty that ever mattered. He started to beg then, to offer me my job back, a board seat, a blank check. He said, "Name your price. Just come back and fix this." I looked past him, out at the rain washing my clean driveway. I thought of Rose's roses and how they only bloom when you stop forcing them.
And I said no. It wasn't about revenge. You see, that's what he still didn't understand. It was about value. He thought value was a number on a quarterly report. I finally understood what Rose meant. My value, the soil I'd spent a career tending, had been plowed under and paved over. You can't unpave that. Going back would have just been me, an old man, applying a temporary patch to a structure that was now fundamentally broken.
It would have validated his belief that people are just tools to be redeployed. I told him to go back and be honest with the board, to tell them the failure wasn't operational, but philosophical, that they'd traded wisdom for data and found the data had no soul. He left, looking smaller than when he arrived. The rain had stopped. A little sunlight was breaking through. Here's what I've learned, sitting here in the quiet. They didn't just lose a supplier. They lost the story of why we did things a certain way, the story of who we were to each other. When you lose that, you've already gone out of business. You just don't know it yet. And me, I'm at peace. My value was never in that office. It was in the handshakes, the remembered birthdays, the kept promises. They can't put that on a spreadsheet. And they can't retire it either. Here's what I've learned. Trust isn't a transaction. It's the soil everything grows in. My advice? Write down the deals that aren't on the books, the promises, the understandings. It protects your legacy. And if you've been cast aside, know that peace comes from valuing yourself beyond any title. If this story resonated with you, I'd recommend 2 books. First, The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. It shows how trust is a tangible economic force. And Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It reveals why our intuition and experience matter in a data-driven world. You'll find the links in the description below. Thank you for listening. If you have a story about value unseen, share it in the comments. Take care of yourselves.